My guest today is Jannette Spiering, Senior Managing Advisor of B and founder of the Hogeweyk in Weesp, Holland. Welcome, Jannette.
Hi, John.
Could you begin by telling me a little bit about what is B, BE?
Well, B is the name we chose for our small advisory firm. And we are part of the Vivium Sorggroop, which is actually the owner of the Hogeweyk. And B is a small advisory firm where we put all our expertise and knowledge available for those who also want to change whatever they want in the existing care models or nursing home models.
So if people are interested in finding out more about the Hogeweyk or how to implement some of the principles that we'll be speaking about, that's where they would contact you.
Yes, that's right.
One of the reasons that we're having this interview is that the Hogeweyk is such an innovative step forward in dementia, design for dementia and caring for people with dementia. But it's not only the modern Hogeweyk. You already innovated once before with the original Hogeweyk many years ago. So what is the innovation process that you use? How do you approach innovation in this field?
Well, John, I don't actually have a kind of mode or working plan to innovate. And I believe you don't put innovation on your agenda, so let's innovate tomorrow at 9. I think you are triggered by things around you which invites you to look at what you're doing right now, and that triggers the way you're working and what you really want to do or what your residents really want from you. So innovation is not actually what is in my standard program. I think everything is worth to do different if you are not satisfied by it or if your clients are not satisfied by it.
So what was the trigger for for Hogeweyk today? What was the trigger, and how did you go about creating this new concept?
Well, it already started about 35 years ago. Actually, in 1993, I was part of the management team right then. We had a lot of competence from outside. A new nursing home was ready to be opened nearby. Our workers were not satisfied. Our residents were not satisfied. And we ourselves were not satisfied by what we were doing and what we were delivering. So one day we sat together with the management team and we asked ourselves the D question, and that was, how would your loved one's life look like once they have to move into a nursing home? And it seems a very simple question, and it's also rather simple to answer to, because you want to have a normal life and you want to be supported by what you can't do or remember anymore by yourself. And that is how it all started. We just wanted people to have normal lives in a normal environment and enable them to go on with their life instead of being hospitalized.
Would you call this the vision behind Hogeweyk?
Yeah, I can. Yes. I think it's the vision is to, and once we came up with it, we had a very long term for it, because we said small scale living for people living with dementia in lifestyle, and now we're just saying normal living, and you can also say that the vision is supported by the fact that we think you have to go away from the medical model and you have to change into a social relational model.
So did this vision appear altogether, or was there some trial and error in developing it?
Well, the vision and the outcome of what we really wanted was a kind of, well, let's say dream. but you can't communicate dreams. So we had to write some things down. And it did not come all at once. But what we started with was that we described how a normal life for someone who moves into a traditional nursing home could look like if we transformed it into a normal environment. So that's what we described, and that is still the backbone of everything what we are doing now. Every choice, every decision that we made during our path of change, because it took us a long way. It is a long way. It took us a lot of time. So everything that we wanted to change, we put it to the vision. If it did not fit the vision, we would not do it. And it is a complete path of trial and error. And if you don't try something new, you don't know what the effect will be, because a lot of what we did hasn't been done before. So we just had to do some things. And well, if it didn't work, well, we put the idea in the closet and we found some other way to deal with it. So the vision and the short description of it is what we needed. We needed that to communicate with our carers, to communicate it with staff, communicate it with everyone who is involved, family, from residents, volunteers, because communication is so immensely important if you're going to change things, because people have to understand, and they have to understand why you want to do it.
So the communication was to everybody involved. It must also have been to the architect.
Yes, of course. When we designed Hogeweyk 2.0, which is also called the Dementia Village, yes, we had a very good description of what we really wanted. And that's an advice I have for everyone who wants to change the walls or his building in the end to deliver care and well-being. If you don't have a strong vision, you might end up with the wrong building. Because architects, they also have their own beliefs, but that's not important. They have to support your beliefs.
Could somebody just take your vision, your document, and say, great, we now have our own vision. It's the Hogeweyk vision.
No, I would not advise it, because change is a process you have to go through by yourself. And just adopting our vision is not what you should do, because you can adopt our norms and values, and you can adopt the way we think, but the outcome has to be your outcome, which fits your country, your culture, your norms and values, because change is not easy. And if you can't believe in what you want to achieve, then in the end, you won't reach your goal. So it has to be your idea. And when I say you, it's your team, because you need a very dedicated team to do this.
So everybody has to do their own work.
Yes. And they can learn from what we encountered during our path of change. They can learn from what the effects are if you change your care model and if you go away from that medical model. So sharing knowledge is very important. But in the end, you have to come up with your own vision, because that must be your own backbone.
So how do you know, when you said earlier that if you don't have a strong vision and everybody is not bought into it, that you don't reach your goal? How do you know if you've reached your goal? Do you need quantitative measures or qualitative measures? Okay, or is it a feeling? How do you know when you had reached the goals that you set for yourself, either in Hogeweyk 1.0 or 2.0?
We looked at the results in the way of were people more happier when we changed the environment? Were people more livelier when we changed our procedures? So we just looked at how a patient was able to become an individual again. And that is what we saw, and that's what I've seen during my career, because I changed a lot of locations from traditional home into a normal home. Every time you see that if you change your organization, you change the behavior of your carers, which is very important, if you give them freedom to do what they think is best, because that's what they're trained for, then you see that happiness is coming back and that normality gives people their lives back.
That's a huge goal. Would you say that the change was fundamentally one of changing a building? Would you say it was changing culture? How would you describe the scale of this change that you have exhibited in Hogeweyk?
Well, what we never thought of when we started all this in 1993, that it would, what we were doing would create such a kind of movement all around the world. And what we see, what we experienced by ourselves is that it's a complete culture change. It's not just about redesigning your walls or put some nice furniture in a room and think you're done with that. It's complete culture change in thinking about how people living with dementia, with severe dementia, can still stay an individual and can still live their lives.
So really, you could call that revolutionary.
Yes, you might say it.
And it's interesting because I know of several projects, several buildings, several communities where they have adopted physical design changes without adopting the vision, without adopting all the changes of operations and personnel and ways of doing things that you mentioned. And they run into trouble, don't they?
Yes, they will. They will, because that's not enough. If you're really eager to provide quality of care for people living with dementia, you have to completely deinstitutionalize, transform and normalize your existing organization or building, or the one you're trying to build new. If you have, for example, still nurses running around in uniforms in your lovely designed home-like environment, people with dementia will keep asking themselves if they are ill and if they are in a hospital, because that's the effect of uniforms on people, for example. And that's just a very small example.
What is another example of changes in operations at Hogeweyk that would be like that? For example, no nurses in uniform that you have implemented?
Well, what we told the team of carers is that it was up to them how a day should look like for people they were responsible for. And so instead of being task-driven, they came up with a way of life which suited the people they are taking care of. And it's not about what time are the beds made up, or at what time do you have lunch, or whatever. As long as people get out of their bed, have several meals a day and get their medication, well, that's what they have to do. And what they do for the rest of the day, well, it's up to them, and it's not up to the organization.
So it's really much more diffuse and much more, the decision making is done at the level of the person's home.
Yeah, that's completely true. And that means for you as a manager or a leader that you have to let go, that you must trust the people who are responsible every minute of the day for your residents, that they are professionals and that they take split-second decisions many times a day in the best interest of residents.
So the change, as you're saying, is not only in the physical environment, not only in the operations, but it has to be a change in the administration, sometimes called the C-suite. It has to begin or end at the top. You cannot use old management concepts with this new way of thinking. I have a question about the picture that everybody sees of Hogeweyk, which is the general store. They see people coming and going to the general store. And when I was there, I had the impression, when I visited, I had the impression that actually it was a storeroom turned into a store. So there wasn't some back place where the milk was kept and then brought out. This is where the milk was delivered. And so the staff from each, the carers from each home came and picked up the materials they needed for each home.
Very efficient. Instead of dealing out everything you have in your storage. No, that wasn't the thinking behind it. It was to keep up the routine of having your morning coffee and or tea, as they say in Australia, and thinking about what you would like to have for lunch or what would you like to have for dinner. Then go out of your house, do your shopping, coming back, putting your groceries in the fridge and in the cupboard. So you have something to do which reflects the things you were used to do during your normal life.
Which affects both staff and residents.
Yep.
Very interesting. What do you see as the future of dementia care? Where are we going, and where, if someone says, I wish to go beyond Hogeweyk, where is the next step in your view? Where is the next level of innovation?
As we know, the people living with dementia will grow in numbers the coming decades, and we can't just go on building Hogeweyks all over the world, because there will be so many people living with dementia. And so I think the next step should be that we as a society, we embrace people with dementia so they can really stay in their own homes, assisted by informal carers, but also with technology. If you see the status of AI with all the sensors, how they monitor how you can live in your own house and how they can warn you if things are not going all right, I think that will be more in the next years even. So people must be able to stay in society, I think, and to be able to do that, we have to educate society or the community around us what dementia is about, so people don't feel any fear to confront someone living with dementia. And I think we should also make our environments, our infrastructure, just as we make it child-friendly, we can also, or bicycle-friendly in Holland, we can also make it dementia-friendly. So, and of course we won't be able to eliminate all the risks which are there if people are not kept inside an institution. But we also have to learn that life is about risks, and that it's not about avoiding risk, but to take calculated risks, as we call them. Because if you eliminate every risk, you must put someone on a chair and ask him not to move. And then even still the ceiling can fall on your head. So life is with risks, and that's what we also have to learn.
That's a very profound concept. So if you could design or write a poster that would hang in the office of every developer, every operator, every architect, every interior designer, related to your work, related to dementia, what would be on the poster? What would the poster say?
I would say, let's start the emancipation of people living with dementia, and let society embrace them.
Jannette, that is a very powerful ending statement. It leads to social change. And thank you so much for being part of this important project and for taking the time.
Thank you, John. You're welcome.